You think the problem is women don't want you, but the brutal truth is this. You've been training people to not respect you and then acting shocked when they don't. You think you need a better line, better photos, a better angle, but what you really need is a spine. Now listen, that title, 95.7% of women find you irresistible, that's the fantasy your insecure brain keeps buying because it sounds measurable. Like there's a cheat code. Like if you just do the right 7 tricks, reality will finally stop rejecting you. But reality doesn't negotiate with delusion. Reality rewards alignment. Reality rewards a man who is rooted, not a man who is reaching. And if you're the type of guy who needs comfort more than truth, click away now. Because I'm not here to pet your ego, I'm here to pull you out of the mud. And before you go any further, subscribe, not for me, for you. Because you don't need more entertainment. You need reminders. You need truth on repeat because the world is loud, your excuses are persuasive, and your old self is always waiting to drag you back to familiar weakness. Subscribe so you stop forgetting what you already know. Here's the thesis. Clean and simple. Irresistible doesn't mean women magically approve of you. It means you become the kind of man who doesn't require approval to stand tall. And that changes everything. Now let's build the ladder. Because your mind loves shortcuts, and shortcuts are exactly how you got stuck. The misconception is that attraction is something you can extract from women if you say the right thing. That's the boy brain model. Transactional. Begging dressed up as flirting. If I perform well enough, I'll be chosen. And it sounds harmless until you realize what it turns you into. A man who's always auditioning. You know that feeling, don't you? That subtle panic when she doesn't respond fast enough, that compulsive checking, that urge to send just one more message to fix the silence. You call it interest, you call it caring, you call it being a good guy. No, that's called neediness, that's called dependence, that's called you handing your self-worth to a stranger and asking her to hold it carefully. And here comes the hard truth. Women don't reject you because you're not perfect. They reject you because you're not anchored, because you don't feel like a man who can lead himself, so you can't possibly feel like a man who could lead anything else. You might be nice, you might be respectful, you might be funny, but beneath all that, you're negotiating, you're adjusting, you're shrinking, you're trying to be palatable. And nothing is less attractive than a man who's trying to be chosen. Why does this happen? Root cause, not the surface symptoms. Not your haircut, not your height, not your bank balance. The root cause is that you've been trained, maybe by past rejection, maybe by a chaotic childhood, maybe by a culture that tells men to apologize for taking up space, to believe that your value is conditional. Conditional on her mood, conditional on her attention, conditional on her texts, conditional on her approval. So you become a thermostat, always changing to match the room. And then you wonder why nobody feels your heat. A man with no center is easy to ignore because he's already ignoring himself. Let me say it sharper. The biggest turnoff is not your lack of status. It's your lack of self-respect. Self-respect is not arrogance. It's not alpha theater. It's not posturing. Self-respect is quiet. It's stable. It's the internal agreement you make with yourself that you will not abandon your standards to purchase temporary validation. And if that stings, good. That sting is your nervous system recognizing a truth you've been dodging. Here's what it costs you when you keep living like this. It costs you time, years, because you're busy chasing signals instead of building substance. It costs you money, not because women are expensive, because insecurity is expensive. You buy clothes to feel worthy, you buy experiences to feel interesting, you buy distractions to avoid the work. It costs you peace, because you're constantly scanning for where you stand with her. Up today, down tomorrow. A man who lives on external feedback lives on a leash. It costs you masculinity. Not in the childish tough guy sense. In the real sense, responsibility, direction, composure, strength under pressure. You trade that for being liked, and worst of all, it costs you identity. Because the more you contort yourself, the less you know who you are. So let's reframe it. The point is not to have 95.7% of women find you irresistible. That's a clown goal. You don't need the majority. You need the right ones. And more importantly, you need to be right with yourself. When you become disciplined, clear, and self-led, your entire energy changes, not because you're trying to get women, but because you stop leaking desperation. You stop broadcasting hunger. You stop begging without words. You become a man with direction. And direction is magnetic. You want to know what irresistible really looks like? It looks like presence, not performance. presence. A lot of men talk. They fill space. They explain. They over-justify. They rush to prove they're safe, smart, kind, worthy. But the man who has it, he doesn't force anything. He doesn't chase the vibe. He creates the vibe. He listens without collapsing. He speaks without selling. He holds eye contact without asking permission. He moves slowly because he's not afraid of losing you. He can walk away because he's not walking on empty. That's called groundedness. And groundedness comes from a life that has structure, from promises you keep to yourself, from standards you enforce even when nobody is watching. Let me paint the archetype for you, the man who embodies the solution. He wakes up and he doesn't negotiate with his alarm. He doesn't start the day by checking if someone wants him. He starts the day by becoming someone he respects. He trains not to look good for strangers, but to remind his body who's in charge. He eats like a man who plans to be alive for a long time. He works like a man with a mission, not like a man trying to make enough to feel safe. He has boundaries that don't require anger. He doesn't threaten. He doesn't lecture. He simply doesn't tolerate disrespect, including the subtle kind, like flaking, like inconsistency, like manipulation dressed up as confusion. And here's the part your ego hates. He doesn't resent women for having standards. He raises his own. He's not in a war. He's not bitter. He's not out to punish anyone. He's just unavailable for nonsense. He's warm, but not weak. He's kind, but not compliant. He's calm, but not passive. That man is rare, and rarity attracts attention. But attention is not his goal. Respect is his baseline. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so what do I do? How do I become that? Good. Action. Not theory, not vibes, not quotes, action. First, stop outsourcing your worth. Stop letting her response time dictate your confidence. If you feel your mood shift based on a notification, that's not romance. That's addiction. You stop checking your phone like it's a heartbeat monitor. You stop rereading messages looking for hidden meaning. You stop asking your friends what you should say. You stop trying to calculate the perfect timing so you don't look needy. You stop. Because every time you do that, you tell yourself, I'm not okay unless she approves. And your nervous system learns that as fact. Second, rebuild your standards. Not the fake, I deserve a 10 standard. The real standard, I am a man who keeps promises to himself. Start with one promise. 1. Something small but undeniable. You say you'll train 3 days a week, then you train 3 days a week. You say you'll stop porn, then you stop porn. You say you'll sleep at a decent hour, then you do it. You don't need motivation. You need integrity. That's called self-trust. And self-trust is the foundation of confidence. Because confidence isn't, I believe I'll win. Confidence is, I'll be okay, even if I don't. Third, get brutally honest about your attention. Where does it go? Because your attention is your life. If your attention is scattered, your life is scattered. If you're spending hours consuming other people's lives, scrolling, fantasizing, watching, reacting, don't be surprised that you feel powerless. You're living in response mode, so redirect. You redirect your attention to your craft, to your body, to your money, to your skills, to your friendships with men who hold you accountable, not men who help you cope. Because coping is what you do when you've given up on change. Fourth, learn the difference between pursuit and chasing. Pursuit is intentional. It's calm. It's direct. It doesn't beg. It doesn't perform. It states interest and then watches reality. Chasing is frantic. Chasing is when you keep investing after the truth has been revealed. Chasing is when you ignore signals because your fantasy is louder than her behavior. So here's your rule. You match energy, you don't chase potential. If she's interested, you'll feel it. Not as anxiety, as clarity. If she's inconsistent, you don't interpret it like a poet. You accept it like a man. That's called discernment. Fifth, stop trying to be liked and start trying to be respected. Read that again. Stop trying to be liked and start trying to be respected, because liked can be purchased. Liked can be faked. Liked can be won with compliance. But respected is earned by the way you carry yourself when you could easily fold. Respect shows up when you say no without guilt. When you don't explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. When you don't barter your values for a little attention. And yes, some people won't like you when you change. Good, that's the tax. Now let's deal with the emotional core of this. Because you can do all the tactics in the world and still sabotage yourself if you don't fix the internal narrative. Deep down, a lot of you don't actually believe you're enough. You're trying to get a woman to confirm what you refuse to confirm for yourself. So you chase, you appease, you overinvest, you accept crumbs. Then you act cool about it while your chest is tight and your sleep is wrecked. Why? Because part of you believes crumbs are all you can get. That's not a dating problem. That's a self-image problem. And self-image isn't fixed by affirmations. It's fixed by evidence. You need proof. Your mind needs receipts. And the receipts come from discipline. Every rep you do when you don't feel like it. Every dollar you save when you want to flex. Every uncomfortable conversation you have instead of ghosting. Every boundary you hold instead of folding. Every night you go to sleep knowing you did what you said you'd do. That's how you build a man. Not with talk, with proof. Now let me ask you a question that might make you uncomfortable. What are you really afraid of? Are you afraid of rejection, or are you afraid that rejection confirms what you already suspect, that you don't measure up? Because if that's the fear, then you've been trying to avoid pain by staying in fantasy. You don't approach, you don't lead, you don't risk, you hide behind timing and signals, and I don't want to be creepy. Listen carefully. If you're respectful and direct, you're not creepy. You're just scared. And fear isn't solved by thinking. It's solved by reps. You become calm by doing the hard thing calmly again and again. And here's another truth. You don't need to be for everyone. You need to be undeniable in your own life. The man who is irresistible is not the man with universal appeal. It's the man with a clear identity. He knows what he stands for. He knows what he won't tolerate. He knows where he's going. He knows what his time is worth. So when he talks to a woman, it doesn't feel like he's asking for a chance. It feels like he's offering an invitation. And invitations can be declined without collapsing the inviter. That's the shift. Now, let's talk about the subtle behaviors that silently ruin you. You say, it's fine when it's not. You laugh off disrespect because you don't want conflict. You stay available even when she's inconsistent. You keep trying after she shows you she's not serious. You accept confusing behavior because you're addicted to hope. That's called self-betrayal. And self-betrayal is why you don't feel powerful, because you can't feel strong while you're actively abandoning yourself. So here's your tight sequence. Not a list you admire, a sequence you execute. You decide what you want, not what you can get, what you want. You clean your habits until you respect yourself again. You speak directly instead of hinting. You set boundaries without anger. You walk away without theatrics. You replace fantasy with reality. You build your life until you're proud to live inside it. Do this long enough and something scary happens. You stop needing them. And that's when you finally become attractive. Because need is heavy. Need is pressure. Need is a contract you never agreed to but keep trying to enforce with your behavior. A woman can feel that. She can feel when you're trying to use her as a solution to your emptiness. She can feel when your interest is actually a hunger for validation. And here's the twist. The moment you become full, you become selective. The moment you become selective, your presence changes. The moment your presence changes, you stop being another guy hoping. You become a man deciding. And yes, women respond to that. Not because they're mystical, because humans respect self-respect. Now let's get even clearer about what 95.7% irresistible really means in real life. It means you become the kind of man who doesn't repel with insecurity. It means you become the kind of man who can handle silence. It means you become the kind of man who doesn't chase a maybe. It means you become the kind of man who can say, I like you, and still be okay if she says no. That's strength, and strength isn't loud. It's consistent. So stop fantasizing about a world where everyone wants you. That's not power. That's a wound trying to feel safe. Power is being okay with being misunderstood. Power is being okay with being alone. Power is being okay with walking away. Power is choosing your path and paying the price. You want to be irresistible? Become a man you can't bribe away from his mission. That's why the archetype wins, not because he has secret tactics, because he has a life. He has purpose bigger than attention. He has values stronger than desire. He has discipline deeper than moods. He has self-respect that doesn't beg. Now, I'm going to say something that might be the line you remember for the next 10 years. No woman is coming to save you from a life you refuse to build. And the moment you accept that, you stop resenting, you stop blaming, you stop spiraling, you take ownership. Ownership is the beginning of masculine peace. So if you've been telling yourself, I'm just not that guy, I'm going to call you out, that's not humility. That's cowardice disguised as realism. Because the truth is, you can become that guy, but you'll have to let your old identity die. You'll have to let go of the version of you that gets attention by being agreeable. You'll have to let go of the version of you that avoids discomfort with distractions. You'll have to let go of the version of you that stays in confusion because clarity would force action. And yes, that death hurts. But on the other side of that is the version of you that walks into a room and doesn't wonder where he stands. He knows, not because people tell him, because he tells himself with his actions. So here's your identity reset, and I want you to feel it, not just hear it. You are not a victim of women's preferences. You are not at the mercy of algorithms and dating apps. You are not doomed because of your past. You are not behind. You are a man in training. And training is not glamorous. Training is boring. Training is repetitive. Training is lonely sometimes. But training creates certainty. You don't need 95.7% of women. You need 100% alignment with yourself. Because when you have that, you don't walk around asking, am I enough? You walk around building enoughness. You embody it. And when you embody it, the right people feel it. Not all people, the right ones. Now close this loop with me. If you want to be irresistible, you stop trying to be irresistible. You start trying to be respectable. You start trying to be consistent. You start trying to be dangerous in the sense that you can handle life. You start becoming the kind of man who doesn't fold when it's inconvenient. You don't beg for love. You become a man who can hold love without losing himself. That's the brutal truth. And it's good news because it means you're not broken. You're just undisciplined. You're just uncommitted. You're just living beneath your standard. So raise it. You are the answer you've been waiting for. You are the permission. You are the plan. You are the standard. And if you want more of this, more truth, more clarity, more tough love that actually makes you stronger, subscribe. Not because I need numbers, because you need reinforcement. You need a place where excuses don't get coddled and potential doesn't get wasted. You're not doing this alone anymore. You're with men who are done lying to themselves, done outsourcing their worth, done living as a reaction. Welcome back to your life.